Let's talk about nursing job interviews. Truth is, aside from your CV, having a very good interview is really gonna help you bridge between nursing job application to actually getting hired. That's why in this video, I'm gonna show you how to prepare on your next nursing job interview, especially if you're applying here in the UK. So stay tuned. Hi guys, this is Grace again from thepinaylondoner.com, and if you're new here, I'm a Filipino expat who now lives in London, and I make videos about nursing in the UK and London and UK living tips. And if you like this kind of topic, please don't forget to subscribe in my channel by clicking the link below, somewhere there, and pressing the notification bell as well so you get notified every time I upload some new content. Okay, let's go straight now to the video. I've had my nursing interview for another position like weeks ago. That's why I decided to at least share to you how did I prepare for it. So I've divided this at least in 3 parts. First is on how to prepare for the interview. Second is what to do during your interview. And lastly, I've included some generic questions that you might expect and just a guide on how to answer them. All right, let's get started. Charot lang. Okay. Ay. Hiningal ako. Wait lang. Okay, number 1 for the preparation is read your CV. Have a read days before so that you don't miss out on important trainings and education that you have to include. For example, if you're applying for ICU or for A&E, make sure that you've got the trainings like ACLS or BLS in there. Have a look on all those trainings so you remember what are the things that you should bring up should they ask you about, tell me about yourself or your strength and your weaknesses. You know, so that is a very good thing to review your CV days before. Tip number 2 is to research something about your employer. Now, this is very important. They've been interviewing like a lot of people, 1,000 people, or I don't know how many they've been interviewing, but it would really stuck with them, especially if you show enthusiasm and desire to work with them because you've researched about them, you know? So go beyond what others might not be doing. Important things that you have to check are what do they specialize in, for example. If you're not familiar, some of the hospitals or the trusts here in UK have specific specialties. They might be only catering heart and lungs, pediatrics, cancer patients, or they may be our major trauma centers, you know, in their district or somewhere. So it's important for you to know if it's their general hospital as well, because if they're heart and lungs, then they might ask a lot of questions about heart and lungs too. Which is very important is their core values. So the hospitals here have their slogan or their core values which guide their practices, which guide their mission and vision. For example, they prioritize research, they prioritize family-centered care, they're innovative, you know, this kind of thing. So you always take into consideration those core values because I'm gonna show you or I'm gonna tell you why it's important to incorporate it in your answer. Okay, so have a read or research about your employer. Tip number 3 is to read about the job description. I just really find it easier to prepare for interview if you know the actual roles and responsibilities of the job you're applying for. And then have a read and dissect the important elements. And it is important to read it for 2 reasons. First is that you will have idea what are the actual roles and responsibilities that you might be doing, and they might be asking that as well when they ask you about what do you expect to do when you've got the job. So you enumerate the things, enumerate in a way that in your own words, you know, the things that are in the job description and relate it back to yourself. Second is those things stipulated in there are particularly the basis of their questions. Now, there are some generic HR questions, and there are some clinical scenario, for example, questions that they might be deriving there in the job description. I'm gonna show you an example in the screen. This is, I've taken it from the NHS jobs. Main elements are clinical practice. So it talks here about health education of patients. So they might be asking you about how important is health education, although it's not common, but something to do with that. How do you deal with patients who keep on asking questions, or families? How do you make sure that they understand the care? They might talk about support in junior colleagues and students. So they may ask questions about facilitating learning of students, especially if your hospital is a teaching hospital. They might ask about in education and research, how important is practicing evidence-based nursing, So these are the non-exhaustive examples on how you can use job description, so it's very important. And tip number 4. Tip number 4 is to have a list, or list down all the possible questions after you do all your research. List down all the possible questions and then your answer to them. This is particularly helpful because you at least have a structured, or more or less a basis of what you're gonna answer should they ask the questions that you've listed down. And practice question and answer portion with your friends and with your families. This will as well help you facilitate to be very comfortable in speaking English, especially that you'll be talking to some English employers when you apply for the UK. Next tip is tip number 5. Tip number 5 is, if you can, have some idea on what's happening on the healthcare situation in the country that you're applying for. In this case, it's the UK. You might talk about some of the most common challenges here in the UK, like staff shortage. So you might emphasize how you prioritize loyalty in your employer, or how important is it to you to work together with your team or with your organization to achieve its common goal with mission and vision, these kind of things. Or you might talk about how being cost effective in your practice can affect healthcare in general, because they will save money, this kind of stuff. But these are just the things that is just nice of you to know, but not necessarily doesn't always appear or you would expect in an interview, but at least that's just one thing. So tip number 6, prepare days before for what you're gonna wear, basically on your outfit. It's advisable to dress smart, and that inspired me today to at least wear this outfit for this video. And you might find a lot of inspiration when you search in Pinterest. If you type smart casual or business attire, just put on some blazer or some color. And one tip that I'm just gonna tell you is that you have to make a balance between looking decent and looking smart versus comfort, because the least that you want is to be very uncomfortable on your heels just because it looks pretty. And you have to remember that from comfort comes confidence, and confidence in an interview is really the key to have a very good result. So plan your outfit ahead of time. Tip number 7. Tip number 7 is, this is very important if, for example, if you're having interview virtually, like in Skype or via Microsoft Teams. You have to remember key elements such as video, audio, and presentations. Presentations are not really a thing, especially if you're applying for Band 5. This is more for higher positions like 6.5 or Band 7. So for the video, first is find a spot in your house with a plain background. That's very preferable. At least that's gonna maintain the focus on your face while you're talking, and for the employer not to be distracted with the clutters around your space. So that's very important. And when I did have my interview, I did use the very same camera that I'm using in filming now as my webcam. So that just helped me in producing a very crisp image, and at least it's giving a very good impression to the employers that you prepared for it. But anyway, that's not a deal breaker. Use whatever resources you have. What's just important is you have a very good lighting that they can see your face properly. And next is your audio. Find a space where it's quiet, at least. Very important that they have to hear what you have to say. So go to a room with no noises, away from the children playing and this kind of stuff. So that's tip number 7. Let's now go to tip number 8. Tip number 8 is be ready. Be ready physically and psychologically. Day before the interview, you have to make sure to have a very good night's sleep. Now, this was when I struggled because in my last interview, I came from back-to-back nights. So I only had 3 hours of sleep before I straight away went for my interview, and it's really not good. I struggled very hard to keep myself alert and sharp in answering their questions. So as much as possible, get a decent night's sleep, and you have to be at your best self during your interview. And eat well as well. If you're going physically to a venue, make sure to bring some little snacks to nibble on so that you don't run out of sugar. These are just to give your brain some sugar and for you to answer questions sharply and sensibly. And lastly, which is very important, is to be very punctual. If you're not really punctual with whatever you do, at least in this instance, try as much as possible not to make the employers wait, because that's gonna give them already a wrong impression. And it's just nice to have some spare time to be cool, calm, and collected. You still have time to do survey of what's happening around, or maybe talk to people, and just to calm your nerves as well. So be punctual.
That's about it, guys. These are my tips on how to prepare for a nursing job interview. And don't forget, check on the next videos as I will give you tips on how to answer specific questions when you are applying as a nurse here in the UK. I hope you have learned something, and don't forget to please subscribe in my channel. I'll see you in the next video.